Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you all here today, and an extra special thanks for joining on Father's Day. We didn't realize this when we set the date for today's discussion. We'll be getting started in a few minutes, but the topic for today's discussion is pathways to college and residency in the United States. So I hope all of you are in the right place. We'd love to know where you all are sitting. We know that a majority of the registrations came from India, but even in India, we'd like to know which cities you're sitting in. And if you're outside of India, we'd love to know where you are. So please use the chat box to let us know where you are while we give everybody a few minutes to join us. So I see Bangalore, I see Pune, Mumbai, Mysore, more Bangalore, more Pune, more Bangalore. Hyderabad, Navi Mumbai. Okay, so so far it looks like an all India crowd. As folks join the call, I might repeat this instruction. Ah, wonderful. Somebody sitting in Iran, in Shiraz. How lovely. I see someone. I see someone typing in the chat box. I think for anyone new who's just joined the webinar, we're just giving everyone a few minutes to join in recognition of the fact that in most of the world, we're celebrating Father's Day. And folks might take a few minutes to join. Please let us know where you are. Everybody is just putting in the city where they're sitting into the chat box so we can make sure that the data and anecdotes we share with you today are relevant to your geography. So I'm going to potentially repeat the instruction in a few minutes, just because it's so nice to see where everybody is around Asia. But I think without further ado, to be respectful of everyone's time, I would like to get started. So again, welcome to today's panel discussion. By way of introduction, my name is Meghna Prasad, and I am co-founder of the Collegiate Path, which is a Bangalore and Singapore-based global college admissions advisory. I'll be moderating today's discussion, but in a minute, I'll be introducing my partner, Amanda Miller, who will tell you more about our work at the firm. A little about me. I lived as an international student and as a career professional in the United States for 13 years, graduating first from Smith College and then getting an MBA from the Harvard Business School. It was a very different time for international students and professionals, as today's discussion will highlight. So, it was just exponentially easier to get into college, to get sponsored for work visas, to get jobs as an international student. And all that has changed just because of the difference in numbers of international applicants, especially those who are applying from Asia. I wanted to go through a few housekeeping details before we get started. Today's session is being recorded for your information. Please do keep entering your questions as we go along in the Q&A box. We'd prefer for them to be in the Q&A box and not the chat box, because my colleague Nikki and I will actually address as many of the questions as we go through today's session, just to make sure we answer all questions in a timely way. The bigger questions, or the ones that we would like our speakers to address, we will save room for in the Q&A session after the speakers present some of their highlights. A follow-up email will also be sent with the video recording from today and with contact information for today's speakers. So I'm just checking to see if there are any new locations. No, I think Iran is our foreign representation so far on the call, unless someone is being shy and hasn't entered their location. So again, for everybody who's joined the call more recently, please enter your city location so we know where you're sitting and can make some of our data references more relevant to your geography. I'm going to get started now with, I see Dubai, I see Sri Lanka, wonderful. So I'm going to move on to introducing our speakers today. We have actually two different topics that we're going to be doing a choreographed dance to. One is discussing paths to US college admissions, and the other is paths to US residency. And our first speaker, Amanda Miller, will be walking us through the college application process. A little bit about Amanda. Let me start with the fact that very poetically, Amanda was born on a college campus. She was the daughter of a college professor. So her entire childhood was spent at elite US institutions, starting with being born at the University of Michigan Hospital, then spending time at Princeton University, where her sisters were born, and then the rest of her childhood spent on the UC Berkeley campus. Amanda applied to Yale University as a pre-med student. She fully intended to become a pediatrician, but such is the wonderful opportunity of US liberal arts education, she actually discovered and fell in love with art history and religion, and went on to spend over 2 decades in the art auction industry as a specialist in Asian art and antiquities. She moved to Bangalore from New York City in 2007 with her husband. And this was really a new chapter for Amanda, which, among other things, led to her serving on Yale University's Alumni Schools Committee in India and interviewing all of the applicants from Bangalore and from many other parts of India, who were part of that self-selecting group of students who were applying for undergraduate admission to Yale. Amanda realized that very few of them had actually received the right advice for presenting themselves well. She now lives in Singapore and she advises families around the world on preparing for college. So welcome, Amanda. And if you would, we would love to hear a little bit about your work at the Collegiate Path before I go on to introduce Raj. Over to you.
Okay, sorry, I was having a little technical difficulty there. I'll be smoother going forward. So yes, I just want to quickly introduce the Collegiate Path. We cover admissions across the globe. Our students are headed to all ends of the earth. However, we are definitely biased towards US education, and generally our students are applying to the US and perhaps together with another geography, but they generally agree with us and choose the US ultimately. We work on undergraduate and we work on MBA and graduate admissions. We also do academic life coaching and help students with executive functioning and study habits, and also help them with enrichment activities, etc. So we start with students as early as middle school, and then we are working with adults who are on their way to their graduate education. And we have our little program there that you can see, but yeah, we're happy to answer questions after the presentation. So sorry, I have to stop sharing. Okay. Back to Meghna.
So let me now introduce our friend Raj. Raj has actually journeyed around the globe several times. He actually started out in India. He was born in Mumbai, but he was actually raised in the Bay Area in the United States. He went on to graduate first from the University of Pennsylvania for his undergraduate studies, and then he went on to earn a master's in public administration from Harvard and an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management. He worked in venture capital in both Silicon Valley and Bangalore, and in 2014 moved to Dubai to spearhead the Shobha Group's investment and expansion efforts. In 2018, Raj joined LCR Capital Partners as a managing director, and he'll share an introduction to the firm shortly. It is interesting that Raj also has a second life serving on Penn Secondary School Committee, where he interviews applicants from India and Dubai. He's also a founding board member of the YPO Dubai Downtown chapter. Welcome, Raj, and please tell us a little bit about your work at LCR.
Thank you, Meghna. Much appreciated. Hi, everyone. Great to see so many folks from Bangalore, where I used to live before Dubai, and Mumbai, where I am originally from. So wonderful turnout from those cities, of course, several others as well. I'm just going to do a quick screen share here. Bear with me. So hopefully you all can see the first slide. This is just a quick introduction into our firm, LCR Capital Partners. We are headquartered in the US in Westport, Connecticut, just outside New York, but we have a global presence with significant offices in Mumbai, Dubai, Singapore, San Francisco, Miami, and of course, Sao Paulo, I forget. Sao Paulo, and of course, Westport, where we are headquartered. So in terms of our firm, we have three pillars to our business. One is advisory services, and we work across different wealth management firms, consulting and other services, and we help clients, H&I clients, with their plans to migrate overseas, in particular to the US. The middle pillar here is really our core business, and it's really what has been the cornerstone of LCR's journey over the past 8 years. And we effectively have a leading position in the industry in helping families secure a base in the US. And we do that through what is called the EB-5 investment visa program, which I'll explain in a second what that is. We also have other options for folks who are interested in Europe. We have the Portugal Golden Visa option and also the Caribbean option through Grenadian citizenship, which leads to a temporary visa in the US, which is called the E2. Today's focus obviously will be on the EB-5 option. And then lastly, we also have access to alternative investment opportunities in the United States, pre-IPO, private equity, et cetera. The firm itself, like I said, the cornerstone of our business has been EB-5. And what EB-5 is, for those of you who are not familiar, it's an investor program. It's a federal, it's backed by the US federal government. It allows families from around the world to secure US residency, better known as the US green card. The time frame to secure this takes anywhere from around 24 to 36 months. It is done through an investment, typically in a real estate project, which is the area that we specialize in. It involves an entire family being able to secure residency. It's typically a mother, father, and any number of children under the age of 21 that can be part of a single application. The path to citizenship is an option. It's for not all families, but those that wish to have citizenship. It's a 5-year journey upon getting the conditional green card. The investment level is $900,000, so it's not a insignificant amount, but it is an amount that certainly can become a game changer for many families and many students that are interested in the US. And the capital is in a project of your choosing. We have several projects on our platform at any given time, and that capital would be invested for a minimum of 5 years in that project, earning a certain amount of interest. After which time frame, after that 5-year time frame, the capital does get returned to the investor. So that's a little bit about us. I think we'll go back to you, Meghna. I'm going to stop screen share here. There we are.
Great. So for everybody in our audience, please continue to enter questions into the chat box. I have a few opening questions for both of our panelists. I'll be actually sharing some data and then asking them for their views on what this data means for college admissions and for the EB-5 investor visa program applicants respectively. And I'm going to do a screen share and share my first data point. And actually ask for some audience contribution here. So I'm sharing a number here. Enigmatically, I have not revealed what it stands for, but it's a jump in a category of Common App applicants to US colleges in the most recent admissions year. Can anybody venture a guess as to which subset of Common App? Common App is the main application platform for US colleges and universities. Virtually all of our applicants have at least one application on the Common App. Most of them have upwards of 5 or 6. Can anybody guess what this 28% represents in the latest admission cycle? Any guesses? Any guesses? I'm going to stop the share and see if anybody jumped in with a number. No, I don't see any guesses. So the guess, the correct guess would have been that this is actually the jump in Indian applicants in the most recent admission cycle. Now, this is Common App data. The Common App enables applications to 900 colleges and universities, but it's a pretty good proxy for the total number of applications overall. I want to share some other numbers with you. Journalists are already latching on to this huge jump in applications. You can see country-wise numbers. The India number was 28%. It's actually dwarfed by Pakistan and Brazil, which were always among the top 10, but they actually jumped a spot in queue. So Pakistan overtook South Korea last year because it had a 37% jump in applicants. Brazil overtook Vietnam because it had a 41% jump in applicants. Now, we can conjecture about all the different contributing causes, but the conventional wisdom already seems to be that this is what we're referring to as the Biden bump. So these are the applicants in the 2020-2021 applicant year, the kids who are actually shipping off to college in the next month or two. And what the Common App data suggests is a 9% jump in college applications from international students. And this is important because for the previous 3 years, there was stagnation or even a slight decline in the numbers. So we're seeing extraordinary double-digit increases from many countries. The one data point in red is China's numbers went down by 18%. Now, between India and China is over half of the total number of international students in the US. And so the big takeaway for me from this slide is that China has probably reached saturation point to some extent. We'll see if this is an anomaly in this year or if the trend is going to continue. But it's very clear that US colleges are looking at other South Asian countries and other parts of Asia and Latin America and Africa to drive their volumes. One other highlight I want to share with you is look at the jump in the number of Canadian and UK applicants to the US. So Canada saw a 22% jump and the UK saw a 23% jump to the US in this past year. I'm going to stop sharing the data and I'm going to turn to Amanda first with my question. Amanda, why is this Biden bump significant from a US college admission standpoint?
Okay, and I'm going to try to share my screen now. So I have a slide. Okay, so there has been an ongoing upward trend in general for the US education, and it has everything to do with the style of education. The US, the philosophy, the educational philosophy in the US is really different than that you would find in India or the UK. Or Australia, some of the other popular destinations. It's this liberal arts philosophy, which doesn't mean that you take art classes, but it means that you study beyond your area of specialty. You get a broad-based education. So that you will be studying English or studying writing, even if you're an engineer. Or you will be studying math, even if you're an English major. And the point of this is that with this broad style of education, you end up with skills beyond those just of your specialty area. So the United States feels that in addition to whatever your specialty area is, that it's really important that you can think critically, that you can write and communicate, that you can research, that you can come up with original ideas, that you can work with people from a broad segment of backgrounds, and you can appreciate the different perspectives that they will bring to the table. And these things allow you to problem solve on a deal with complex problems from multiple angles, and is very, very effective. So it allows for innovation, it allows for, bringing ideas together from different disciplines. And this, what the slide says, these are the skills that future jobs will require. So whereas specialty worked in the past to, if you're just studying marketing and you know how to do marketing, that's great, you can get a job in marketing. But today you're going to need to think more broadly. And so this liberal arts education is being replicated, or other countries are trying to replicate it. There's some great new liberal arts universities in India, like Ashoka. But the US still, hands down, does it the best. They've been doing it the longest. And as you can see from the skills that future jobs are going to need, this kind of thinking is required. So even in a place like Singapore, which has some very strong universities, they're trying to bring in some of this American style flexibility into their programs. They're not quite there yet, but they are trying. So this is the major pro of the US degree, and why we are biased to the US system. You are not stuck in a narrow specialty, so you can study beyond your specialty. You can also switch specialties, which is what I did. So you can also create your own specialty. You can bring together areas that might have seemed far apart and find out how they can work together, such as maybe music and computer science, right? And there's degrees in this now. Your degree, the value of this degree, the value of American graduates as employees is highly recognized around the world, and so it's highly marketable. These universities in the United States are also very wealthy. People love their college experience and donate heavily to their institutions. And as a result, these schools have unbelievable facilities and laboratories. They have just opportunities that come from that. In addition, in the United States, you will be allowed, if you complete a degree there, to work for a short period of time. So for most people, it's 1 year, but for those who complete STEM degrees, they will get a 3-year employment visa. The other thing that's quite different is holistic admission. So in most geographies, your board scores and perhaps an entrance exam are your sole criteria for admission. In the United States, they will certainly look at your board exams, but your term marks are equally important. And they're also very interested in what you do outside the classroom. And this can take on significant weight in your admissions. So the last bit is that there's so many good options in the United States, so many good schools. And there are 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States, and really at any of them, you're going to get a decent quality degree. And there are just more schools in that list of top 100 programs in the United States than any other geography. So this is now, Meghna pointed out that the number of UK students applying to the US has increased by over 20%. And this may be part of the reason is that the UK, which is the next most popular geography, has just been a disaster because of COVID, with the A-level exams being canceled, and their whole grading system rubric that they had invented to replace it ended up being thrown out the window. What happened was the top university, the Russell Group of universities, were forced last year to accept all their conditional offers that they had laid out, and they usually expect about 30 to 40% of students won't meet their conditional offers. So now the schools were oversubscribed. They tried to get certain kids, a lot of their students, to defer till this year. And as a result, some of these Russell Group universities are decreased their admits for this year by as much as 2/3. So students with high performing students from the UK are not getting places in top UK universities. And so therefore, even they are looking abroad to the United States. And this is also impacting Indian and other international students who would be applying to the UK. It's just something to be aware of. So Meghna, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Great. So thanks, Amanda, for the college admissions perspective on what this Biden bump means in terms of just, why the US tends to be the geography of choice for so many in other countries. Raj, the question now back to you. How is the Biden bump significant in terms of demand for the EB-5 investor visa program? Why is this suddenly top of mind for families who are looking at US college admissions? If you can explain the correlation between the two, I think it'll be really helpful.
Sure, absolutely. Before I get into the slide that I want to show, I just want to mention that, look, I graduated from Penn in '94, and that was a whole different era where the concern, the stress, the frustration around getting an H-1B, it simply didn't exist. Folks went on to good colleges from India. They pursued short-term or long-term career aspirations in the United States, and it was fairly straightforward. The entire landscape has shifted, and I'm going to share a slide to give you a perspective of what I'm talking about. If we look at this slide, it really kind of carves out 5 different stages of your child's academic, professional life or career. And if we look at, high school, we all know it's already tough enough getting into top colleges, right? Admissions rates have fallen even more through this pandemic, and it just continues every year to get tougher and tougher. The class sizes at the top schools remain the same, but the demand for those seats increases every year. So we have a hurdle there. We have another hurdle in phase 2, where we're talking about looking at summer internship opportunities, full-time opportunities. And for international students, it's just gotten so much tougher. You have OPT, which allows you to stay in the US for a period of time, but it's not permanent. It's filled with anxiety and uncertainty. And even if you get the OPT, it's not possible to just simply be hired through the OPT program by your employer. H-1B has been a hot topic for many years. It is really a lottery system. You may get it, you may not. There are over, I think the last count I saw was around 275, potentially crossing 300,000 applicants for the H-1B, with only 85,000 slots. So if we do the math on that, it's really only a 30% success rate of getting the H-1B. So again, not an ideal situation. And let's not forget, H-1B is restricted to a single employer, a single geography, a single job function. The moment you want to exercise any kind of optionality between your job, your function, your geography, your employer, any of that, H-1B is not going to work for you because it really is pegged down to a single role within a company, within a geography. So very limited, very limited. And then lastly is, if you don't hit that lottery and you don't have a sponsor, you unfortunately are forced back to your home country. So imagine working through phase 1 in high school to get into a top school and then face this forced exit where you can't really leverage your degree. You can't really secure the professional opportunities that you aspire to secure. It's a very frustrating situation. I just want to, on this slide, clarify, set the stage for differentiating how we define international students. I think we all understand it, but I want to make sure that you appreciate how specific colleges are in defining international students. This is taken directly from the MIT website in terms of how they define an international applicant. MIT considers any student who does not hold US citizenship or permanent residency to be an international applicant, regardless of where they live or attend school. If you're a US citizen or permanent resident, then you are considered a domestic applicant. It's as simple as that. And one of the aspects which we're gonna kind of shift to right now is this next slide, which is just shocking. Now, I never appreciated when I joined LCR 3.5 years ago, I never appreciated how hand in hand our business is with that of Collegiate Path or other such firms. While a lot of your stress and anxiety, I'm sure, is focused on admissions, it's also important to understand, what potentially can be done to alleviate some of that stress. Now, we all know that getting into these colleges, you need the grades, you need the SATs, and so on and so forth. But one takeaway from this slide is the massive delta in admissions rates between domestic applicants and international applicants. Let's take Penn, my alma mater, right? 9.3% of domestic applicants gain admission at Penn. And these stats are maybe a little outdated, but the delta has about stayed the same in the recent couple of years. And if you look at international foreign student applicants, which most of you on this call, if not all of you are, is 1.5%. Massive delta. And that delta plays out amongst all of these schools and the likes of UC Berkeley, University of Michigan, and all the small liberal arts college, Amherst, Williams, Pomona, and so on and so forth. So this really plays out across the board. It is a point of frustration. And I would just say that, a last comment here before I hand it back to Meghna is, at the end of the day, a lot of your children's, kind of the journey is about optionality, right? Optionality of deciding the right school, the right geography, and so on and so forth. But when you come to the end of your undergraduate degree, that optionality is very important, or it remains very important. And what I mean by that is optionality in terms of career choice, right? So today, if you wanted to join a startup, you can't do that with an H-1B. You need US residency. You need to have some way of claiming US residency if you want to do your own startup. If you want to join a startup, same thing applies. A startup is not going to sponsor you. It's very unlikely that a startup is going to sponsor you. So maintaining optionality in life, I think, is a blessing. I share a similar story with Amanda. I was actually pre-med when I entered Penn, and I quickly realized that I have no business being in medicine, and rather just being in business. So I switched over to the business side, and that level of optionality was something that a liberal arts college like Penn afforded me. And I think many of you are perhaps going to face a similar scenario where you think you want to study a particular discipline, but you want to pivot. And the same thing is true for a career. You may start with a certain aspiration, and eventually you may want to pivot. And so that is really what a lot of what we do at LCR is, really ensuring that there's a fit between that kind of objective and then this option of exercising a investment through EB-5. It's not for everyone. It's certainly not for everyone. But we're happy to guide certain families that are interested in US residency through that process.
Thanks, Raj. I'm going to just request screen access. So I'm going to share another quick data slide, just one slide this time, with the audience. This increase in international applicants that I talked about, and just the increase in applications overall, was uneven. So this is not even about international applicants. This is about just how applications overall, international and domestic, changed in this last application year. And it was highly uneven. Basically, the elite schools saw the biggest jumps. So if you look at the data on this slide, it distinguishes between more selective and less selective schools. It was actually quite a broad definition that the Common App took. So it took a 50% admit rate as more selective, so 50% admit rate and less as more selective, and then anything higher than that as less selective. You can see it's about 150 schools that are more selective and over 600 that are less selective. And the gains in applicants accrued mostly to the private large universities like NYU. That's why I have their logo represented on the slide. Large public universities like the University of Michigan. Small private universities. Small means less than 10,000 students at the undergraduate level. So Princeton University is a good example of that. All the gains, for the most part, accrued to these categories. And other categories actually saw losses or stagnation. And so what this means is there's more competition. So the data Raj shared with you was a couple years out of date. The delta between admit rates may stay the same, but the overall numbers might actually look even worse, meaning lower single-digit numbers for the top schools like the Ivy League schools, for example. So let me turn it over to Amanda and Raj now. Amanda, first question for you, please. How does this sort of shift in application patterns, going more students applying to the elite and largest universities, what does this mean in terms of how candidates are going to be assessed in the coming years? What changes in terms of how colleges assess their candidacies and how to stand out?
Thanks, Meghna. Yeah, it's getting more and more competitive for these elite schools. Really, most families come to us with the same list of 20 universities. And you have to think about the fact that the applications from India for these universities have increased by 28% in this last year. So it's going to be even more competitive for those schools. I mean, the good news is there are actually all kinds of great schools beyond that 20. But if you are really, your heart is set on those 20, I'm just going to explain. I mean, I have my slides, so bear with me 1 second. Hold on, sorry. I didn't organize well enough. Okay. Here's my web. Okay. Sorry. Okay, this is not my forte slides. So in general, for every school, these are what they're thinking about when they look at your application. They want to know, they're looking at your grades because they want to know if you are going to be able to hack college, if that you can handle the rigor. They're going to look at your engagement with the world through your extracurriculars, because they want you to be an engaged student, and they want happy students are students that have a lot of activities, etc., and make great friendships. And so that's something they're going to be looking at. They're actually worried about whether, if they admit you, that you'll say yes to them. So they look very carefully at whether you're actually a good fit for the school, because they only want to pick students that will say yes to them. And then lastly, what is special about you? And these things, are what might make you a leader or might make you just successful in life. And so they're trying to understand this. So this is particularly for the elite schools on these standout aspects, but for all the schools that are selective, these are the 4 dimensions that they're evaluating. Now, for the most elite schools, these candidate qualities are a must. And when I was doing interviews for Yale, I was specifically asked to look for these things. So first of all, do you have passionate intellectual curiosity? This is the kind of student they want, people who love learning, who get excited about learning. And this isn't necessarily what all colleges are looking for, but these elite schools are looking for it. They want students who have already demonstrated critical thinking skills, because that is how they are going to actually, number 3, be able to contribute to the academic community, both in the classroom, by bringing the learning up for everybody by asking smart questions, and bringing in their perspectives. So next, they want people who want to make a positive impact. These schools realize the value they have, and they want to give it to students that are going to change the world for the better. So do you have ideals and idealism? Are you a doer? I mean, it's great if you have ideals and idealism, but you actually have to do something about it. And so they want students that have demonstrated this already in their high school career, because they're likely to continue along this path in college. And then number 6 here is back to their concern about yield. Are you actually interested in the school? Are you just applying to it because it's a famous name, or have you actually determined that this school is a perfect place for you? And they will absolutely evaluate you on this, and they will turn you down, even if you're the most amazing applicant in the world, if you haven't properly expressed interest in the school. 7 is who is going to, they know they have so much to offer, who's going to make the most of it? If you're somebody who isn't going to take advantage of those resources, then they probably will let you go to a different school. They want this to be demonstrated in your application. And then lastly, this is a big one, and especially in a time of COVID. Are you resilient enough to cope with setbacks? They don't want students who are going to crumple the first time they don't get a good grade on a test, and they want to. It's tough and competitive, and they want to make sure that you have the experience and the resilience to deal with this. That's somebody who's going to be successful in the long term. So, Meghna, I hope that answers. I'll turn it back to you. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Amanda. So Raj, really, when we're talking about both, you talked a little bit about how the EB-5 pathway and having a green card in hand changes the game from an admission standpoint. Can you speak a little bit more about how this desire to apply to the top schools in the country, public and private, can you talk about how the EB-5 investment visa program impacts the college pathway after you get in? Like, what are the implications of having that in hand?
Sure. Just going to pull up a slide here. So, again, before I jump into the specifics on this slide, I just want to say that, over the past 25 odd years of interviewing students from India, many of whom are from India applying to Penn, it's amazing to see that both the quantity and the quality of the applicant pool has risen dramatically. And so I just echo a lot of what Amanda and Meghna are saying. It is absolutely a different, playing field for students in high school. And so there's so many, apart from the grades and the SAT scores, there's so many other variables. So coming back to Meghna's question around the benefits of U.S. residency as it pertains to the student's journey. The first, I've already touched on this, right, is that you remove yourself from the international student quota by having a U.S. status. So when you apply on your application, by simply saying that you are a U.S., either a resident or a citizen, you are no longer subject to that international quota system. And again, I want to echo the same point I mentioned earlier. I don't want anyone in the audience to interpret that as meaning that your academics are going to be less important. They're equally important. So please don't get the impression that having a US green card is going to all of a sudden get you into Stanford. That's not the way it works. It just removes you out of a certain applicant pool that is effectively more competitive because there's fewer seats. The second is an interesting one, lower tuition rates. Now, this is really designed for the public universities, and I'm sure many of you are going to be applying to the likes of UC Berkeley, UCLA, University of Michigan, University of Texas. There are some wonderful public universities in the United States. What this requires is an additional element of planning, because you do have this additional step of securing in-state residency. And to do so, it just requires reaching out to that university and understanding what that process entails. But if you do get that planning in place a little bit more at a more advanced level, where you start off a bit earlier, you can avail of that, and you can simply get your U.S. residency. You can apply to your colleges of choice, and if it happens to be a public university, you're going to have a significant savings on tuition. The third is access to scholarships and student loans. Financial aid and whatnot is really reserved primarily for domestic students, domestic applicants. So having this additional access to scholarships and loans is fantastic for those of you who secure residency. The last is a very important point. I think I've already touched a little bit on this. Part of the college experience, regardless of whether you go to Penn or Yale or what have you, is that you want to take advantage of this once-in-a-life opportunity to leverage on-campus recruiting. I mean, I graduated a long time ago, and it was just, I look back and I took it for granted. Let's put it that way. It was a phenomenal experience to just have all employers from around the world around the US land up on campus. Now, if you've worked this hard to get into college and now you're in your junior or senior year securing an employment, it can be quite frustrating where employers that come to campus are not really able to interview you simply because you don't have sponsorship or you don't have a situation that allows them to employ you because you're an international student. That is a very frustrating outcome. And it's certainly something that didn't exist 25 years ago, that scenario, but it very much does exist today. And now multinational companies, many of them simply recruit for their foreign offices. So if you want to work for, again, I don't want to pick companies just randomly, but if you want to work for a Goldman Sachs or a Disney or a McKinsey or what have you, in many cases, if you're an international applicant, they will secure a process for you that is overseas and not in the US, which may not be what you want. This is a great kind of just a snapshot. I'm not going to go into all the details here for sake of time, but it does give you a sense of the magnitude of savings that you would have by having a US residency as opposed to an international status. So just take any of these schools as an example. If you look at the top left, University of Michigan. If you just look at the figures here, you're talking about over 4 years, a savings of $140,000 for US residents, right? UC Berkeley, close to 120,000. I mean, these numbers are just staggering, right? And I think the one way to calculate whether an EB-5 option is suitable or not, if you want to do dollars and cents analysis, is look at the ROI, right? If you look at it from an ROI perspective, okay, if you go to a public university, you're going to have these savings. You know that you can likely do the planning and secure in-state residency and have these savings. But even if you don't go to a public university, right? Even if you don't go to public university and you land up at a private college, you have to forecast the significant increase in earning potential by going to a top US college. It is an absolute, these are all outliers, right? Folks that graduate from the Ivy League and similar such schools, MIT, Stanford, Northwestern, et cetera, the earning potential is far superior than a tier 3 school or a tier 2 school. So if you want to do an ROI, it's certainly something you can do. And the $900,000 investment that an EB-5 entails, which is again, an investment, the capital does come back. But if you look at the opportunity cost of that over a period of years, it almost pays for itself. This is another interesting slide. It captures the top 20 schools globally. And if you look at what metric is used to capture this ranking, it's around net worth, right? So if you look at, 16 of these 20 are US-based colleges and universities that have produced more ultra-high net worth alumni than all other universities combined. Pretty staggering. And it just, it's unbelievable. And this is a mix of both, private colleges, large universities, liberal arts colleges, public universities like UCLA, University of Michigan, UC Berkeley, and obviously a lot of the other, the private elite Ivy League colleges are obviously well represented here. But again, this just shows you that there is a certain trigger that is caused by going to a good college, right? There are a lot of qualitative aspects to being at a great college, a well-reputed college, that are tough to measure, right? The networking, the learning, the mentorship, the ability to have professors eventually, serve as your board members or mentors as you progress in your life and in your career, the friendships and so on and so forth. But if you just look at it from a dollars and cents perspective, it's also very compelling. Right? So having the ability to study in a US college, I mean, again, I'm biased. That's really been my journey, both undergrad and grad. But the ability to do that and also explore, a wide array of career opportunities without the hurdles that unfortunately international students are faced with, I think that can be a game changer, as I alluded to earlier. Meghna, hopefully that addresses the point. I'll give the screen back to you.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Raj. So this is the last question. Very quick slide. I think it's not going to shock anybody sitting in India. And I think even for those who are sitting in Dubai and Sri Lanka and Iran. This is a relatable slide. So I could have picked any number of newspaper headlines. I happened to pick one from earlier this month from the Economic Times. And the article was really basically responding to this huge uptick, right? More than a quarter more students applying to the US this year than the previous year. And why? And they said, apart from the other charms, right, that Amanda talked about, the other pros of a US degree, it's that our young people have lost faith in our public health system, in getting access to vaccines, and actually being able to attend school in person. Right. And these are really real issues that Amanda and I discuss with our families every day. It is weighing on kids in India that they have lost more of in-person schooling than students elsewhere in the world. And many of our parents are telling us that there has really been a loss of trust in India and in the safety net that families have. We have kids who have lost family members to COVID, and it has been really traumatizing across the board. And so this has been one of the huge reasons for this exodus. And I'll just tell you anecdotally, the profile of applicant Amanda and I have seen in the last year from India is totally different. We are seeing kids who never intended to go to the US suddenly do a U-turn, and have families who never considered it as the next step do a U-turn and now are considering this as their geography of choice, among others. So I'll turn it to Amanda. Amanda, can you tell us what changes this year in terms of the college application process? I mean, a lot has changed, not just because of Biden, but because of the pandemic, right? So can you talk about what changes in the college process? I think you're muted.
Yep, got it. Yeah, no, so much has changed. It's actually we've been like, I have to read and be part of forums constantly to keep up with the changes. There is so much that's been going on. I'm going to share again. So first of all, the process itself has changed. Because of COVID, and this happened last year. So this is the second year where not every school, but most of the schools are test optional. And this is because it's just been literally impossible for some students to take the tests. We've been through one cycle this way, and I want to clarify, many students come to us thinking this means, great, I don't have to take it. And they can apply without taking the SATs or ACTs. However, we can, after seeing the last year's results, we can assure them and assure families that it's definitely puts them on the back foot. That if you have high SAT or ACT scores along with your grades, you stand a better chance of being one of that smaller percentage point of international students who are admitted. So, what we tell families is it's not worth risking your health to take this test, but if it is at all possible, you should be studying and you should be trying to take them. There are a few schools, such as the University of California system, that because of a court judgment will not consider any test scores, but that is by far the minority. So everybody should plan on taking the test if they can. It just gives them a step up against this really competitive applicant pool coming from India. Board exams, they keep getting canceled. And this has caused a huge amount of stress, particularly with the Indian curriculums, where even the British curriculum, where students plan to make up for less than stellar grades, perhaps in the board exams, because that has been in the past the determinant of many universities. Well, the US are looking at your term marks, and suddenly these board exam, the final results are based on term marks. So this has caused a lot of stress. The one thing with holistic admissions is the US does understand you do have an opportunity to explain circumstances such as this in your application, and they have been forgiving in some of these cases. So, but the important thing to remember is it's really important to do as well as you can during the term. So our students, because of COVID, all summer plans, internships, other enrichment activities that they were planning on taking part of, everything was canceled. And so everybody's had to scramble to figure out what to do. Now, if you are applying to the most competitive universities, students still need to be productive. So it involves being creative in terms of your thinking. And so you can't do an internship in person. Well, there are internships and projects that you can do online. You can start a business online. You can volunteer online to help in this time of trauma. So there are all kinds of things that students have been able to come up with to do, even from their own houses. But this is important. It's not actually letting you off the hook in terms of engagement with the world. There's a whole new Common App prompt that was inspired because of this COVID situation and everybody appreciating maybe what they have in a different way. And so that prompt, brand new, and I'll just read it to you. It's reflect on something that someone has done for you that has made you happy or thoughtful in a surprising way. How has this gratitude affected you or motivated you? And Meghna and I just love this prompt, that encouraging people to think about what is good in their life and what people have done for them in their life. So aside from the application process, as we've been talking about in this webinar, the outlook has changed. It has gotten, even with US applicants, because of this test optional situation, more US students applied to more schools. So the number of applications to an individual selective college or university went up generally anywhere from between 5 to 100% for some schools. So it became that much more competitive, even with just the US admissions. And when you look at the admission rates for a lot of these schools, you will see many more have dropped into this high rejection, single digit category of admissions. Additionally, now, the UK is with what's going on with their fiasco, it's no longer such an attractive possibility. The chances of you getting into Oxford or Cambridge are even much lower than they were in prior years. And so the US just has more strong options, more good options. And so as Meghna pointed out in the beginning of this call, the number of applicants from India has just ballooned. So that's just, you have to realize on that list of top 20 universities that Raj or Meghna showed us, they just are getting more competitive if you're an Indian applicant. This is going to continue. With COVID is continuing, and these situations are not letting up for at least for this coming year. We'll have to monitor after that, but that is what this year's class is, applicant class is going to have to be dealing with. So, but again, as I said earlier, if you can look beyond these top 20, there are excellent options in the United States that have strong opportunities, strong results. So we encourage all the families to have to consider this and risk adjust their basket and look at some of these great schools that are in less popular geographies, for instance, that are academically have very strong reputations. So Meghna, I will turn it back to you.
Great, thanks, Amanda. So Raj, last question for you, and we're just at the hour mark, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. What process changes do we expect from a sort of visa outlook standpoint?
Sure. I mean, look, I think, again, I'm just going to share an interesting slide here. And while I am doing that, I just want to mention that, the entire journey that folks that decide to go to the US on, it requires a lot of planning, right? I mean, when you're applying to college, there is a process starting probably as early as the 9th grade to think about, do I want to go study in the US? In the current context, admissions has become so much tougher. Getting employment in the US as a foreign student has become so much tougher. However, if we look back in time, I mean, take a look at this slide from dating back to 1976 all the way to the mid 90s when I graduated. Many of these names and faces are going to be familiar to you all, right? You see Vinod Khosla of Kleiner Perkins and founder of Sun Microsystems, Sergey Brin of Google. You see Satya Nadella from Microsoft. You see Elon Musk. He happened to be my classmate at Penn. You see a lot of names here. Sabir Bhatia of Hotmail, Sundar Pichai of Google. These are all folks that ended up in the United States, and it truly became a game changer for them, right? They were able to explore their entrepreneurial pursuits, and they have disrupted many industries in the meantime. Meghna, coming back to your question in terms of what changes, I mean, a key change is that this landscape that you see here on this slide no longer exists, right? The ease by which a lot of these folks ended up in the US, those days are over. Now, the good news is that under the Biden administration, there is a strong push towards making it a little easier for foreign applicants to secure themselves in the US. The EB-5 program continues to be the most seamless and perhaps the most, I would say, efficient way of doing so. If we look here at a more recent kind of set of examples, Kunal and Naveen on the top left and the bottom right happen to be friends of mine. We in fact invested in Kunal's first venture when he came back to India, Snapdeal. Many of you would have heard of Snapdeal. But look at his journey, right? He was forced to quit Microsoft. He graduated from Penn. He was forced to quit Microsoft and return to India in 2008 simply because his H-1B ran out of time. And in other cases here, you'll see Naveen Tiwari, Naveen of InMobi, right? He finished up at HBS, didn't get the H-1B lottery, and he was forced to return to India in 2008. And there are many other examples like this where the challenges are very real. However, with the right amount of planning, and this is, again, I want to just underscore this point, is with the right amount of planning, you can have a very different outcome. Part of that planning involves obviously getting into the right college that fits your, your personality and your academic aspirations. But another part of it requires planning in terms of what next, what's after college. Right now, I think a lot of the folks in the audience today are thinking about the next maybe 4 years, 6 years. And that's great. And that's important. And that's where Collegiate Path comes in a very meaningful way. But there's a whole other journey past that is also important to reflect on as early as now, as early as high school. And that involves thinking about, is the US going to be a destination where you or your children want to secure a future? This slide I'm just going to touch on again. It just mentions the H-1B. Some of you have asked about that. H-1B, as I mentioned, there's 85,000 slots. The demand far surpasses that. These numbers here are outdated. The latest numbers are north of 275,000 in terms of number of applications. So you are really looking at a 30% or so success rate. So again, to summarize, Meghna, the changes are, I want people to feel a sense of optimism in terms of the current administration. We didn't enjoy this sense of optimism during the Trump era. And we, as far as LCR is concerned, we did see in 2020 a pause in the number of families that were looking to secure an EB-5. That pause was caused by 3 triggers. The first is obviously the pandemic. There was a fear factor amongst all of us. We didn't know what was going to happen, and there was a pause. A lot of people just said, look, I don't want to risk my hard-earned money in this environment. Let's just wait. The second is certainly the US elections, right? A lot of families around the world that had their own concerns about Trump decided to wait until the end of the year, and that was fair. And lastly, the financial market instability, right? A lot of families that, their financial liquidity was put to challenge. And so many of them just said, I'm just going to wait till things settle down. What we have seen now, Meghna, is that starting, I would say, in January of 21, we have seen a continuous increase in interest from families around the world that want to secure their US residency. The recent months have, we've seen a massive surge India continues to be our strongest market. That's really where we have the largest concentration of market share, followed probably closely by Latin America, GCC, Africa, and rest of the world. North America, we're seeing a lot of folks on H1B that want to switch over to EB5. So there will be continuous, regulations and things that might change. But what we believe as a firm is that EB5 is here to stay. It'll go through its, changes over the coming years, but
I think we might have lost Raj.
Yeah, Raj's video is hanging, but I think he was towards the end of his point, and he'll rejoin, I think, as soon as he's able. I wanted to thank everybody on the call for being patient. We actually went a little bit over in the terms of the speaker presentations. There is one question. So I've been answering, and my colleague Nikki has been answering questions as we've gone along the session. So please do look at the Q&A box in case you had some of the same questions. There is one open question that I would actually like, oh, Raj is back. So Raj, to welcome you back, a quick question on how do students already in high school benefit from the EB5 program given the 18 to 24 month gestation period?
Sorry about that, guys. I was afraid of these technical issues. Apologies for that. Not sure where I got off, but to answer the question, look, I think the earlier you start, the better it is. And that's the point I was trying to articulate earlier. If you start as early as the 9th grade, you have the peace of mind, right? That by the 11th grade, you're going to have the EB5 in your hand, and you're going to be able to secure summer internship opportunities without any stress, right? If you're in the 11th grade, okay, summer internship opportunities, you may face some hurdles there, but you'll have the EB5 in hand by the time you graduate. And that'll again become a very easy path to pursuing full-time opportunities. So it really depends where you are now, but delaying it is going to not have any positive value.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, question for you. What is better, the SAT or the ACT?
So it depends on what is better for the student. The schools are absolutely neutral, and either one is absolutely fine. But there are differences between these tests. The SAT, they both have equivalent math. The SAT is a bit tougher in the English section, the reading and the comprehension and writing. The ACT has a science component. So students who are not science inclined generally shy away from the ACT. More humanities-based students sometimes prefer the SAT. But what we generally suggest is that the student do a diagnostic timed practice test of each. They're free practice tests online, and score them according to the rubrics, and then you can actually compare the scores. Whatever one the student performs better at is the one that they should prepare and take officially. And we in general prefer the SAT simply because there is so much freely available prep material online. Khan Academy has teamed up with College Board, so you honestly, if you're a disciplined person, you don't need to take a class. You can self-study for it. The ACT, on the other hand, you actually have to pay for all the prep material, so there's that. If you do equally well on your diagnostics, we say go for the SAT for that reason. But yeah, either is fine. We tell students to do either one.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amanda. I have a question now from the audience that could actually go to both of you. So I'll have Amanda, you start first, and then Raj complete it. Is the transition easy for kids if they move to the US in 8th or 9th grade? So I think the question really pertains to the academic and social transition at a pretty critical point in their development, right, as teenagers.
Yeah, so middle school is not always a fun time in one's life. And it's definitely easier to make the transition when students are in elementary school. It's pretty easy. But students can do it, and it's just good to go in with some plan in terms of the social side of it. In terms of the academics, it's a great time. It's a great time to transfer for academics. That way they're caught up with the American curriculum by the time they're in high school. They will find, generally, if they're coming from Indian curriculum, they'll probably be ahead in math and science from the US middle school students, but they'll be behind in their reading and writing skills. But it's a very good time because your grades don't count in middle school, so they'll have a time to catch up with the academic requirements so that they can hit high school running and do really well and then get into their top schools.
Great, thank you, Amanda. Raj, anything to add since you did some of this moving about yourself?
Look, I'm a big believer that the U.S. has so much, incredible options, infrastructure. I did a program while I was in high school in the US at Harvard, which is the Harvard Summer Program. And I think, these are all little small pieces, small stepping stones that lead to more comfort with the US university experience. And so being in the US at the 8th grade, 7th grade, anything of that sort, it's a stepping stone to getting more familiarized with the US earlier on. I think the other part of my answer is certainly that just like selecting a college, it depends on which school in the US you are thinking of. If it's a boarding school, if it's some other kind of school, you have to do your due diligence. Has a school had a track record of sending students to the right high schools, to the right types of programs after the 8th grade. So I think it goes back to the fit factor, right? There's no one school that's going to be the right fit, but you got to figure out if it checks your criteria. I would say U.S. overall, the educational system, if you pick the right school, is second to none. So if you're looking at a prep school or any of the more selective schools, there's so many great ones, Andover, Exeter, so on and so forth. US just, I think I'm very biased, so as you can tell.
All right, thank you both so much. I was busy answering a question on the chat, but a new one has popped up. I'm not sure if I think this is for you, Raj. What are the projects under TEA and which part of the US?
Sure. So the TEA is target employment area, and these are all technicalities that I don't want to go too much into for the sake of everyone's interest. But we have 3 projects, 2 projects officially on board, and we are soon onboarding a 3rd project onto our platform. We have a project in downtown Miami, which is a mixed-use project called Legacy, and it has a combination of, it's a hotel, residential, and a healthcare facility. We have a project in Canton, Ohio, which is a iconic, it's the NFL Hall of Fame project, and that has a combination of entertainment center, F&B, retail, hospitality, classic mixed use. And a 3rd project that we'll soon be onboarding is going to be a 5-star hotel, part of the Starwood Capital Group. Many of you would have heard of Starwood, and that's going to be in Hawaii. So at any given time, we have projects that fall into these TEAs, and these are at the $900,000 level.
Great. Well, I think we're done with the open questions because Nikki and I have been very efficiently answering them on the side. So I don't want to impose further on people's Sunday schedule. So I'm just checking the chat box once to see if there are any questions. I think we're good. So last chance, audience, to ask any new questions. Otherwise, I'll share my thanks, Amanda and Raj, for making this session possible today. And to everybody in the audience, we will be sharing the video recording from today, as well as contact information for all of us on the call. So please do reach out if you have family-specific questions that you didn't want to share with us on the video discussion, and we'd be more than happy to discuss those one-on-one with you. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Meghna. Amanda.
Thanks, Meghna. Bye, Raj.
Happy Father's Day, everyone.